Dear 2012 presidential candidates, thank you for taking the time to read this letter from a humble veteran of the U.S. Navy. I am writing you today because I have determined a means by which the United States can save over $2 billion and tens of thousands of lives every single year. My proposal would be simple to deploy, quick to take effect, and would come with myriad benefits for the nation that would improve our safety and security right now and for years to come. Pertinent background. In response to the terrorist attacks of 9/11, the U.S. military invaded Afghanistan to eliminate the Taliban base of support for al-Qaeda. We have occupied that nation with our military presence ever since. Afghanistan is what students of political science and international relations, like myself, classify as part of the developing world. It does not stand out as a leader in economic matters, with one important exception. According to the CIA World Factbook, Afghanistan had a GDP of $17.9 billion in 2011, compared to the U.S. GDP of $15.06 trillion that same year. Theirs is a rather small economy. It is therefore quite distressing to see that the CIA also lists opium as the number one agricultural product, as well as the number one export commodity for that nation, and after a decade of American occupation no less. Many Americans already know about the thriving opium industry that our tax dollars have subsidized over the last 10 years. What some may not know is that, according to the Reuters news service, 92% of the world's opium comes from Afghanistan. That's about as close to an American monopoly on the heroin industry as it gets. Making matters worse, prior to the U.S. invasion, the Taliban, according to the Washington Post, had successfully banned production of opium throughout Afghanistan. Why is the U.S. having so much trouble? Back to the United States. A CBS News report from May of 2010 highlights very clearly why the opium heroin exports of Afghanistan are a major problem for the United States. Heroin use is up across the country, and it's not rock stars who are the clear casualties of this uptick. In 2012, it's also American youths. What's being done? At present, and according to their own website, the DEA enjoys a budget of $2.02 billion annually. Being that said agency was, and again this is according to their own website, created to wage an all-out global war on the drug menace, I would like to be the first to issue an epic fail in response to their utter failure. I wonder how many jobs might we create right here in America if we eliminated the Drug Enforcement Agency altogether and moved the drug enforcement duties of our federal government into the far more relevant care of the Department of Homeland Security. What Congress must finally admit is that our current drug laws are a threat to our own national security. And here is where it all gets tricky. A recent article in the Washington Post indicates that Iran is ramping up their uranium enrichment activities, an indicator of weapons-grade material manufacturing. How is this relevant to Afghanistan? Here's the breakdown. 92% of the world's opium comes from Afghanistan. Most of that opium is trafficked through Iran. Iran trades this opium with North Korea in exchange for missiles. North Korea distributes the opium as heroin throughout the world. It can be deduced, therefore, that the American monopoly on heroin is not just killing young Americans, but also helping to arm the Iranians with advanced nuclear warhead delivery systems and funding the North Korean government. To make matters worse, this is all going on at a time when Iran is ramping up production of enriched uranium, and North Korea is perhaps more unstable than it has been ever before, in light of the death of Kim Jong-il. If you have doubts about North Korean involvement in the heroin trade, just Google Pong Su and heroin to receive a wake-up call. It is safe to say that the $2.02 billion of U.S. tax revenue that is spent every year on funding the DEA's all-out global war on the drug menace is not well invested, considering that they employ some 5,000 plus agents and gads more administrative and bureaucratic staff. Their true role in modern American society seems to be that of a jobs factory for conservative law enforcement families who are being paid federal money to pretend to fight an obviously unwinnable war. It would seem that America failed to learn its lesson from the days of the Prohibition. If you ban a substance, it only increases demand, raises prices, and allows for production to go unregulated. At a time when the U.S. economy could really use a boost, why are we dumping billions into a failed agency? Legalization of narcotics manufacture and sales would fragment the power base of illegal drug cartels, generate trillions of dollars in tax revenue for the United States, freeze funding to Iranian and North Korean missile programs, instantly create millions of agricultural and retail jobs here in the U.S., and make use safer for those who are chronically addicted. For the United States to fail to act at this critical juncture would be a travesty of epic proportions. It's bad enough that we sat idly by while the administration of the 43rd President of the United States created this situation, but now we can sit by no longer. That is why I am writing today to call upon you, the prospective presidential candidates of 2012, and any congressional lawmakers or newscasters who may take an interest, to stop this ludicrous cycle. Will you rise to the call? Will you please free up over $2 billion in federal revenue by euthanizing the DEA? Will you get us completely out of Afghanistan in order to end the opium profits being generated there under the protection of our own armed forces, even while said profits strengthen the armed forces of North Korea and Iran?